Okay, everyone, welcome back. Let's have you just chat in your chat window there. What your position is? Who in your mind is our most feared competitor if you were capture manager on the case study opportunity? Okay, got some a variety of opinions. Several are nervous about Stark. Some Omega, some close. No one seems overly concerned about the do nothing strategy of just sticking with the same old legacy system. So that's that's good. Okay, let me share with you real quick some of the feedback, and you could okay. Susan thought it was a little close to call between Omega and Stark as far as competitor. Here's a little of your feedback that came from your exercise, and you could see this online as well. Irene has it this way. As far as the numbers, it's very close. Let you read her comments. Feels like our discriminators can be nimbleness, innovative technology, responsive to management measurement. Morgan actually sent a picture, a snapshot of the bidder comparison chart that she filled out. And thank you, Morgan, first for doing this. And I'd like to spend just a second here and solicit some of your some of the class's opinions here. So what would this show us if we were in a room together and we came up with this as a team on this bid? Where would we be showing possible strength that we might want to leverage going forward as we eventually are going to have to put together a compelling story, a message, a proposal? Where do you see, based on the score, the numbers of us against these compared to the others? Yeah, international experience is one. Here, after we apply the weighting, we're at 27, Stark's at 21, Omega's at 24, OSG, or should be ESG in-house is at a 6. So yeah, that's somewhere we would want to leverage. Jonathan said project management. All right, let's check that score. We're at a 20, 16, 18. So we're, we're possibly in a position of strength there. Transition risk. In this particular case, Omega is someone we have to worry about possibly. They're at a 30, we're at a 24, Stark's at an 18. So you get the idea. This can guide us to further discussion and possible strategies in how we're going to shape our message and where we're going to focus our solution and our discriminators. Yeah, Nicole, we might need to bring a partner in with federal past performance experience if we feel that's a serious gap and the information's valid. Then that's the kind of thinking we need to do. This is Jonathan. My bidder comparison yield a close race between Stark, Omega, and Vibrant. Clear loser was the in-house option, sticking with what we've got. Close competition. Let you read through some of this. We don't know what we don't know. Yeah. And how true is that on a lot of real deals that we bid on, right? We just don't know all the facts. Jan says Vibrant's in the lead in most categories. Price is unknown. Obviously, in a real pursuit, that's going to come into play. Irene, the Pwin increased. Okay, now we're moving into the Pwin update. Probability of win calculator increased slightly. More clarity around relative strengths. Okay, that's what we would hope for. We would hope for, as we advance the pursuit and the opportunity, we gain more information, more insight, maybe more relationship with the customer. That's the trend, that we would hope for. Morgan says her Pwin score actually decreased based on the adjustments in certain categories and customer preference. We just don't seem to have a strong relationship with the customer, while our competitors do and have worked with them in the past. Okay, so that can be that's something we got to watch out for. If Omega's been in there, and they are in there with their technology, and unless they've stubbed their toe somewhere along the way, it's something we've got to be aware of. The the Pwin went up to 3.0. Incumbent really isn't a strong contender. Okay, great. Thank you for doing that and sharing and thinking through the process, the tools. It's what makes capture real. Is these type of collaborative exchanges. So imagine yourself getting together with your small team of people that are going after this opportunity and working through those kinds of activities and discussions and challenges. Let me just pause here. Kelson, Dennis, you can certainly chime in. Any of you, are there any comments, questions, lingering questions that we could answer, or comments at this point based on these first two sections that we've talked about in our capture training today? Okay, we'll trek onward. All right, let's go into this this third lesson today of the boot camp. So we want to take obviously this is over a period of time. We want to take this information that we're gleaning, we're gathering, we're analyzing, and we want to form that into strategies. And remember, a strategy is not just a statement or a thought or a nice to have theme. A strategy implies action. Some actions we're going to take. In relation to win strategies, then, we want to give a short overview of pricing to win, because a capture manager needs to stay engaged when we start talking about pricing to win. Then we also want to talk briefly about very common solution gaps. So as we go through this gap analysis that we just talked about before the break, the SWOT and the strengths, weaknesses, gaps, there's common gaps that we often run into as capture managers that if we don't get them resolved early, they can shut us down and they can stop an opportunity in its tracks. We'll talk about action plans, what they should look like, executing on them. Then comes a very important, Kelson talked about those decision gates. Here comes the next big, really important decision. We call it a preliminary bid decision. Remember, the RFP is not out yet. We have not seen section L and M or all the evaluation factors, anything yet. So we're going to make a preliminary bid decision based on our capture activity, what we do know. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we want to, okay, an RFP is coming. How do we as capture managers support proposal development? We're going to keep this fairly brief because the next two parts of the boot camp are on proposal management and proposal writing. But we want to talk about the interaction between capture managers and the proposal team. And then we'll wrap up and get you ready for the Wednesday session of the boot camp. All right. Very important, just a reminder. Capture is iterative. It's something we're not one and done here. We populate it, validate, update, and implement. It's ongoing. It's collaborative. It's as a team. We're always trying to fill in the gaps, confirm agreement, get consensus. It's the capture plan, whether it's an online one, whatever form it takes, that keeps us moving in the same direction, iterative. So here we are in that roadmap. We're on this bottom, second to the bottom bar. The bottom one will be the action plans, and that is win strategy development. Very misunderstood. If you talk to someone in industry, in business development, and you ask them what win strategy means, you're gonna get a whole bunch of different answers. So we're gonna talk about what we believe win strategy means and how to develop that as a capture manager. All right, first thing when it comes to win strategy, this is the baseline. If we don't know what our discriminators are on a specific pursuit, we are operating from a position of weakness when it comes to strategy. Because strategy implies action, and it implies that there's a competing force. Action and a competing force. So if we don't know where we stand in the competitive landscape and how we are possibly different and better, then we're operating pretty much at more of a neutral position. That's why finding out these discriminators is so very, very important. So let's talk win strategy. Here's what it is not. And I've already said most of this, but it is not a theme statement. It's not a headline. It's not a sound bite. It's not a hunch. It's not a bias that we have or that part of our management team has or a leader in our organization. It's certainly not a best guess. It shouldn't be anyway. It's not low price, although I will caveat, sometimes low price, technically acceptable, has to be our strategy because that's the type of contract it is. So Yes, can low price, technically acceptable be our overarching strategy? Yes, but then we need to put in place action items to get there. How can we prove to the government that we are technically acceptable and the low price? So it can be a strategy. A win strategy isn't the same as a value proposition, and we'll talk about value proposition. It's certainly not all about us. A win strategy is about solving the customer's problem, evidence and impact. So it is misunderstood, the word strategy. It is all about competitive advantage. Our strategy is designed to get us to a competitive advantage. Without competitors, there would be no need for strategy. If we're going for sole source work and we're the incumbent, you know, it's just sell the status quo. All right, but in this instance of competitive bids, we have to take competitors into consideration. So when it comes to a good, better, best strategy, a good strategy, it's based on what we offer. Fine, so is everyone else's. A better strategy is based on customer needs and our solution. Okay, what are their hot buttons and how does our solution work into that? And the best win strategy is based on customer needs, the competitive position we're in, and our solution. All three of those. So again, the probability of win pyramid, we've got to have actionable strategies and statements to have the very best win strategy. That has to be our focus, is the Pwin. Okay, there's 5 aspects, if you will, to a win strategy that I hope you would remember. And I hope you would remember this, carrying this forward into your proposal work. For those of you who are in proposals or going to be or have been, or you're working with proposal teams, these are the 5 aspects of a win strategy that should be driving our proposal messaging. One is, how are we going to, remember we went through those perceived strengths? How are we going to leverage our strengths? What are we going to do to leverage our strengths? We talked about weaknesses and possible risk in our solution. What are we going to do to mitigate those? If they're there, the customer's probably going to see them. So mitigate weakness. Neutralize our competitors' strengths. All right, if we know that Omega is really, really strong when it comes to their relationship with this particular customer, or maybe tons of government expertise, public sector, what are we going to do to neutralize that? Exploit competitor weaknesses. Maybe Omega has floundered. Maybe that HR system that ESG is using isn't working the way it should. Wouldn't that be nice to know? And we could possibly exploit that in some way. And then again, always focus on discriminators. So those are the talking point, the key points, if you will, of win strategy. If someone were to come to you and say, so what's our win strategy on this pursuit? Well, we're going to leverage our strengths by doing this, and that's what it's about. So we can create statements. These statements can go right in our capture plan. These aren't proposal statements. These are statements that drive us to action, make our capture plan actionable. We will mitigate our weakness in what? By taking what action? We could even go the next step and say to result in what? What's the desired outcome of that? We're going to leverage our strength in international customer service by what action are we going to take? How are we going to leverage that? And what will be the outcome? We'll neutralize our competitor's strength by doing what? Exploit our competitor's weakness. We will focus on our discriminators at every possible chance we get. Those are the action steps associated with a win strategy. Now, we've talked about this term ghosting. It's a little less favorable of a term right now, given where we are socially as a society. So, we kind of don't like the word because of what it connotates in some circles. But think of it this way. How can we in our messaging exploit competitor weaknesses? So if maybe Stark, maybe we know for a fact that they have high overhead costs. Maybe that's just well known, or we've run into it before, we can validate it. We want to focus on our efficient management structure and our low overhead. Maybe our competitor outsources overseas their programming, their coding, and maybe we don't think this government agency likes that. Maybe they have a preference for onshore coding and programming. Then if that's something we do, we might want to stress that in our proposal. Design costs. If we know competitors are high and we can keep it low, focus on it. Turnover. All right, if we know competitors use a virtual model for all their transition and implementation, but we put someone on site, let's maybe tout it if that matters to the customer. Cost overruns, or careful estimating, meeting budgets, meeting cost commitments. Okay, so again, there's places in our capture plan templates where we capture this information, regardless of the template we're using. So just all we got to do is document it. What are our strengths? What actions are we going to take to achieve what? This is what sets companies apart when they go after strategic pursuits. They take the time, they invest the energy in making sure they're positioned to win. Same idea in the PowerPoint template. What actions are we going to take to leverage our strengths, and what's the end game? What are we really trying to achieve? Mitigate our weakness, exploit competitor weakness. Here's an example filled out. We're going to leverage our strength in project management. How? By emphasizing our co-location during transition. Name our ESG key personnel and positions and how they align with our team. We're going to leverage our strength in being named the most stable application for the last 5 years. That's pretty important to leverage. How we can do that? We're going to provide a couple of case studies for them. You get the idea of how we capture this information, we document it, we improve on it, we keep it updated, we validate it, and it drives our win strategy. That's what it's about. Exploit competitors' weakness. ESG's in-house. They have a lack of evolving technology applications. So what are we going to do to exploit that? What's the goal? To prove to them without saying so much that they can't do this with their current technology. They won't succeed. And there's some other possible competitor weaknesses. What actions might we take to achieve what outcomes? This is win strategy. This is what makes for a good capture manager. A good capture manager is able to walk through this type of plan and planning and then follow up and execute on it and assign it to people and hold people accountable. Here's that last one, the focus on discriminators. Okay, pop quiz. Let's see if you were paying attention. What are the 5 aspects that we should always remember and think about when it comes to win strategy? Go ahead and chat those in the chat window. There's 5 aspects to a win strategy we should always remember. Okay, Carter, focus on discriminator is 1. Leverage our strengths, yep. Mitigate weakness, yep. Neutralize competitor strength, awesome, very good. Okay, there's a good list Margaret just posted for all of us to look at. This, I mean, this is something we can actually post and make public to the team and visible. If we're doing, for example, let's say we're doing weekly capture team status calls, and this is exactly what we should be going through as part of that status call, is how are we doing on leveraging these 3 strengths we've identified? How are we doing on mitigating these weaknesses and risks and so forth? So this boils it down to making it actionable. This is where some companies really struggle because they just try to do too much. If we distill it down to these compartments, if you will, these aspects of win strategy, it makes it so much easier. All right, there's a part of there's a part of win strategy that we want to talk about because it's so often overlooked, and it does come into play here in the case study a little bit, and that is being an incumbent. I know most of you probably have existing contracts that you are performing on, and so what about being an incumbent? Let's talk about just some cautions real quick, because sometimes we're our worst own enemy without even knowing it. One caution is be careful not to just bid the status quo. If we've been the incumbent for 5 years and we've done pretty well, a recompete comes up, they've opened it up, it's not sole sourced. Just like sports, some teams get a lead, and so they take their foot off the gas and they coast a little bit and they play not to lose, and then they lose. We got to be careful of that same mentality, that we don't use that same mentality on an incumbent contract. We have to be careful that we don't describe the current solution as the current best value. Those may not be synonymous. What was best value 5 years ago may not be best value today. We may have to offer up a whole lot of value add features that didn't exist 5 years ago to really show them best value. Just providing minimal improvement because we don't want to rock the boat. Careful with that one. A lot of recompetes happen because they're expecting change. The customer is expecting change, innovation, upgrades. Be careful that because we're the incumbent, we've been doing this for 5 years, we know better than you. So we're going to propose or suggest really what you should have, not what you've put in that RFP. Very dangerous. We got to be careful not to. This kind of goes to a couple of them earlier, a couple of the bullet points. We can't always paint a vision of the past and just focus on what we've done well and think that the government or the customer is satisfied with that. If the reason we're teaming with someone is to take them off the street and buy them off the street and reduce competition, that certainly can work, and it happens, and it can be effective, but it's risky. It's risky if the customer perceives that's what you're doing, that you're signing someone on as a teaming partner because you don't want to team with them. So be careful. Just be careful with that one. We don't want to rely on fear of the transition as our only strategy. Like, oh boy, don't change. The transition will be painful. You'll lose money. You'll lose people. Be careful that we don't use the fear factor too hard and too often. Don't structure a team and solution based on the current contract. Maybe sometimes, maybe that's what the government wants. Maybe they do want status quo. But this is where it comes, know the customer. We should have a pretty good relationship with them by now. Dennis, I think you're on with us, and just if you don't mind for a minute or so, have you seen in your experience, I'm catching you off guard here, I know, have you seen in your experience where maybe we relax a little as the incumbent and end up regretting it?
I have seen that, although try to prevent it because I see it when we're hired to try to help them. What I've seen is sometimes a big risk is incumbents, as we say, sometimes know too much. They know all the details. They know a lot of what's under the covers, and it distracts the incumbent from bidding and focusing on what the government is really looking for as the next step in evolving a program. So it's important as we kind of get ready for, say, a recompete of our current contract, is to be sure we understand with fresh eyes what direction the government wants to go in, and also be sure to stay in touch with all stakeholders. So there could be, the program manager, there could be end users, there could be other organizations that are serviced by, your direct customer, and they may be consulted in making the next award decision. So incumbents are getting, I think, less lazy and running more scared because of last few years' history of sometimes incumbents are in the most vulnerable position, particularly if the government's looking to lower prices. So, but some incumbents, they do have blind spots and believe if you're competing against them, they've resolved old problems, but maybe not. So, watch for the signs to unseat an incumbent, but also watch for the signs for yourself to be unseated if that's you. And I guess also be aware of competitors just trying to underbid you and providing false messages about, how simple and easy and low risk the work is that you're doing. Be sure to defend your positions pretty well. So I have other ideas, but they'll fit more in the managing and writing workshops that we'll do later this week. Thanks, Brad.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Dennis. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with this, but it's becoming very important because like that little graphic on the previous slide, that target on the back, if we are the incumbent, believe me, there are plenty of companies and organizations out there that want to take that work. They want that work, um, and we have to put together a capture plan just like we would any other time. And so if you use that KISS statement, keep it sold strategy, that's what we want to do as the incumbent. So Dennis and I pretty much have mentioned these already, but strategically on the positive side, we talked about things to not do. These are the things we want to do, is innovative strategies presented. What is the new best value for them? New ideas, continuous improvement, that trust, that relationship. It can go so far. We talked about that dysfunction earlier this morning and why that is. And a big part of that boils down to trust and knowing people and being comfortable with people. We want to be able to present a vision of the future if we're the incumbent, and provide evidence that we've succeeded and evidence that we will succeed going forward. And what's the impact? Evidence and impact works with incumbency as well. We do want to be able to create a compelling reason not to change, not to change the solution, not to change the vendor, right? The supplier, that we will likely have to change the solution like we've set up above, to provide more value, be innovative, and up to date. Know and minimize competitor strengths. So this is where bidder comparison comes in every bit as much when we're the incumbent as it does otherwise. So same with discriminators. There will be all these bidders that are going to try to copy us. And they're going to say, well, just because Vibrant does it, we can do it too. We can do it every bit as good as Vibrant. So we have to be able to discriminate. All right, enough on incumbents, but it's a big deal. Sometimes we relax. We let our guard down. We don't invest in the rigor of capture on an incumbent contract, and we should. All right, we should start early and not wait till 3 months before that contract is coming up for recompete to get serious about it.
Yeah. Hey, Brad.
Yes.
Yeah, if I might, Dennis, again, if I might jump in. So one of the sayings about, when do you start preparing for a recompete of your contract? And the best answer is the first day on the job of the contract you just won before it comes up for competition. And that might be 3-4 years down the road. One of the most important things, and you can do this now with any of your incumbent contracts, is be sure you're collecting good metrics about your performance, about the value added. Be sure you're collecting customer quotes or not losing them if you're already getting them. Be sure you're responding if your contract is getting CPARs, performance assessments, and there's something negative or something off, you have the opportunity to respond to those. So begin to collect, or even if need be, generate information even years ahead of time, because we can't make it up in the last 3 months before the next RFP is coming out. It's real hard to track down all that good information you wished you had for the last 3-4 years. So, if nothing else, keep good information about the level of your performance, dollar savings, special, unique problems you've overcome. And the more you have customer quotes about it, the more it becomes a believable history, somewhat narrated in the customer's words and not just your own recollection. You'll be putting in a proposal 3 years down the road. Thanks, Brad.
Great advice. Thank you, Dennis. Let's talk about price to win, just enough to make sure we understand that this does fall within our area of responsibility. We don't necessarily, as capture managers, lead a price to win exercise, but we have to be involved and aware. And in small businesses, like some of you are in quite small businesses, you're it. This is one of those many hats you might wear is helping your company determine where do we fit here on this bid when it comes to this notion of price to win. Now, price to win, some believe that, that's a number. It's not. We're not looking for a number, a dollar number, a price. We're looking more at, when we talk about price to win here during the capture phase, more of a price window. So look at this image. You see, let's start across horizontal. We've got our vibrant capability here. Up and down on the vertical, we've got the price. Somewhere along the way, if it's a government customer or probably a business to business customer, they are setting some kind of budget for this capability they're looking to acquire, products, services, whatever it is. There's a maximum budget over here. There's an addressable budget, which is where they want to probably stay on this particular acquisition. Then there's a minimum credible budget that they believe this task, these services can be done for. So that's the vertical, that's the price. The capability across horizontally, then there is a point where there's a minimum acceptable capability. You've heard of low price, technically acceptable, where, well, it's probably here. And this is the maximum justifiable capability. In other words, anything that you propose, that we propose, that's beyond this level of capability is probably going to be viewed as maybe gold plating or trying to sell something they maybe don't need. It's a Lexus instead of a Hyundai, for example. Sorry, Dennis, I know you like cars. That was a bad example. So in the somewhere in this window is where we want to be when it comes to a price to win. So here, where we've got an addressable budget and we're right in the sweet spot of capability, that's probably a good place to be. Over here, we've satisfied the capability at a minimum level. The price, that's okay. All right, it's satisfying the credibility. Low price, technically acceptable, of course, is going to be right here. We've met the minimum budget, low price, we've met the minimum capability, so we're going to aim for something in here. If that's the nature of the contract, so be it. All right, that's where we want to close our price to win window. If we get over in here and our capability is so low, we will be viewed as absolutely naive if it's something to say, well, you're going to get best value by really eliminating these features of what you've asked for and just going on the cheap. All right, that's unrealistic. Where we want to be, we want to be somewhere in this best value educated price to win window. This is why we want to know the customer as much as we can, know their history, their spend, and find out where their thresholds are. So that's a quick and dirty lesson on pricing to win. There is a whole section in the capture guide on this. So please, if this is part of your responsibility, I encourage you to read through that, study up on it. This just shows that same window we just talked about and how over time, okay, as we pursue this opportunity over time, that window should shrink to where we get pretty close and a pretty good idea of what the government is willing to put out for certain capability, where price and capability come together for the best value to the government. And then here's a place where we would document that kind of information in a capture plan template, for example. All right, the customer budget, expectations, low cost, best value, and somewhere in there is our window. Okay, last thing we'll talk about, then we'll give you a break here again. This idea of value proposition, somewhat misunderstood, rightfully so. There's just a lot of ways to define a value proposition. So let us share what we believe is a good definition of a value proposition. And it's we should be collaborating. Ideally, if we can get to a customer and have a business discussion, we should be able to collaborate actually on a value proposition. But take a look at these 9 statements, if you will, and mentally in your mind, put a green check mark by the statements that, yeah, that sounds like that's a value proposition, or put a red X in your mind where no, that's not what a value proposition is at all. Just go through that mental exercise for just a second. All right, see how you did here. Customized value proposition that meets the customer's need. Yes. Yeah. It's not some rote, memorized advertising slogan. Value proposition shows how our solution is better than an alternative. Ideally, yes. A value proposition is not one size fits all. If we're selling cloud solutions to one company or one government agency, that doesn't mean that our solution and our value is going to be identical, our value proposition, to the next agency or the next customer. We have to tailor our value propositions. They should not be confusing and complex, difficult to remember. They should not be generic statements like, we are a leading provider of, we are the world's best and baddest and fastest. Generic statements like that do nothing to score points in an evaluation. A value proposition should clearly demonstrate benefits, not just our features, but the benefits. Deliver superior value to the customer without sacrificing profitability. Our customers don't want us to go out of business. So we got to be reasonable. That educated best value price to win window. Set priorities and timelines to reinforce the value proposition. Yes, a good value proposition has timelines associated with it. When can I expect as a customer to get a return on my investment? How long will it take? Selling features and not defining the benefits is a bad idea. That's not what a value proposition is. So here you see examples of what a value proposition should contain. It should show, and a value proposition isn't always a written statement. It's not necessarily going to even be written in a proposal. It's something that guides our message back, our solution. But it should quantify improvement. It should show timing of the return on investment or the problem being solved or implemented. What is the solution? It should be in there. The cost or investment required, the payback period, and how are we going to measure this? If we're going to implement a CRM system at ESG and help them reduce their delivery time and response time and keep track of vendors and inventory, how are we going to track it? Prove it. Prove it with a value proposition. And here's a little template. you know, and I don't suggest, again, putting a statement like this right in the proposal, but it helps guide our strategy and our thinking. Customer name, essential specialty gear. We'll realize what? By purchasing our Vibrant CRM solutions, and maybe we show the cost, for $3 million a year, declining over the course of 5 years, whatever it is. Beginning with fourth quarter of 2020, the improvement, you see where I'm going. All right, so fill in the blanks on this template with the results being measured and trackable. Couple examples. I'm not saying these are perfect, but these have come in from some past trainings we've done. Give you an idea. So again, it's a really good guide to come up as a capture manager, come up with a value proposition that guides our thinking as we go forward. Okay, we're at a position as capture managers, we've got to make a preliminary bid decision. Are we going to go forward or aren't we? So we're going to come back from the break. I'll show you some of the key questions we should be asking at this point in the pursuit, and we'll go from there. And we'll end today's training on transitioning into the proposal activity, the pre-proposal activity. So I'll set a timer. We'll take 10 minutes and we'll reconvene in 10 minutes. Okay, everyone, welcome back. I put up there with a couple minutes left on break some of the preliminary bid decision checklist questions that at this point in a pursuit, when we're getting to where we've done our best as far as competitive assessment, looked internally, done the bidder comparison. We're getting close to a point where we think a formal solicitation may be coming. At some point, there's this decision gate that Kelson talked about, where we have to make do we continue or defer or need more information decision. So here's some really good questions. And I challenge you and encourage you to come up with some of your own in your own environment, your own business. Sometimes these are called leadership boards or sessions like that, where the capture manager, the sales lead, the pursuit lead, whoever it is, has to gain, approval to continue on. So use this as a review of where we're at. Many companies actually make a formal blue team review in association with this gate decision. And so if we want to do a blue team or win strategy review session, this is what we want going into that typically. All right, and again, we're pretty much in control here as the capture manager, but we want the information we're capturing in the plan, the opportunity description, our customer intelligence, hopefully a baseline solution, at least notional, competitive position, our competitive position, what's our suggested win strategies, and early action plans. All right, so those are the things we just went over in this training. We review this as a core team, a core opportunity team, and out of that, are there still some gaps we need to fill? Are there some strengths we can continue to leverage? Where might we need to enhance our solution before this, solicitation comes out? Have we agreed? Can we agree on the win strategy and the approved action plans that go with that? So many companies use we've done that competitive assessment black hat review. We do a blue team review and really take a close look at where we're at as far as the capture plan. And do we have a whole lot of gaps to still fill or not? And this leads us to that preliminary bid decision with all those questions we showed. And this verifies that, yep, we're committed to go forward, and we'll go to the next gate unless there's showstoppers that come our way. And so we'll talk about those more later. But that's where we're at in this position. And here's a caution. At each one of those gates, those key decision gates, you've maybe heard this term before. We want to do kind of a litmus test and make sure we're not just column fodder. So what do I mean by column fodder? I mean that sometimes the customer just needs a competition. They know who they're going to choose as their supplier or vendor or partner. They know who they're likely going to contract with, but they have to make this a competitive bid. So they put out a solicitation and they send it to companies A, B, C, D, and E. And the requirements are here of the customer. And lo and behold, company A, their capabilities, their price, their solution lines up perfectly with the requirements. So they submit their bid, company B submits their bid, C, D, and E. And these are just column fodder. They're just filling up the columns. but I'm not saying that the customers are unethical or they're practicing unfair competition. I'm not saying that or suggesting that at all. I'm just saying the better the capture, the better the relationships, the more we know of the customer's real underlying needs, and we have evidence of that, the better chance we have. If we just get a blind RFP and it comes to us and it's on the fringe of whether we can even deliver or not, likely, we're just filling up a column for them. Now, there are times when we're going to want to bid, when we know we have little chance to win, the Pwin is low, maybe to position for future work, maybe, but not as we should not make that our common practice. So I'm sure if you think in your businesses, I know I can think in the Shipley business, times when we've been asked to submit a proposal, it's come to us a little bit unexpected, and there are some hints, some very strong hints in the requirements that suggest this was not written for us. Some of these requirements clearly were written for our competitor. So we need to just make sure we're not column fodder, and decision gates are a good time to do that, just to make sure. So after blue team, we want to move forward into actually executing these action plans that we've already talked about. And those action plans come out of the win strategy. So if we do a good job developing the win strategy, the action planning has mostly been done because we've identified specific tasks, actionable activities and tasks that we can do to bring about what we want strategically. So this is what's included in action plan of a capture plan: the tasks, a schedule, a customer call plan, reporting and follow-up, leading to then planning the proposal. Not writing the proposal yet, planning the proposal. So back to what should be included in a capture plan of any kind. These are subsets, if you will, of an action plan. And we're going to go over these real quickly now. There should be an intelligence collection plan. What intelligence do we still need? Solution development plan. What is going to be our notional solution? It's very difficult to put together a message, a compelling message, if we don't have at least a baseline solution. Contingency plans, customer call plan, and then a schedule. We want to be able to hold people accountable. So in the action plan, very simply, like any other project management, we've got to identify who's going to take the action, what specifically do we want done, by when, and how is it going to be reported and accomplished. The who, what, when, and how of our action plans. So whether we're using, here's a snippet of the Word template where we're gathering information, again, who's going to do it, when, and then note the findings. What exactly are we looking for in taking that action? Here's intelligence gathering plan in the PowerPoint template. Are we on track? The solution development plan, the headings here, that what is our solution element? What exactly are we going to offer? ESG, is it just the straight CRM, or have we gained enough intelligence now to where it's CRM plus our promotional module that is a bolt-on to that, that does community outreach programs and campaigns? What solution elements do we want to learn more about? What gaps do we have? What actions to close those gaps, when, and who? So this is where we start developing a solution plan. Okay, we've mentioned before there are these common solution gaps that way too many times we find hold up a capture effort because the team doesn't feel they can go any further really with the capture plan because there is no baseline solution. There's too big a gap. So what are those common gaps? Let's just briefly talk about them. And again, we want to fill those gaps and make sure that they're taken care of. So when we talk about solution, very simply, you see how it should evolve. Unless we're selling off the shelf, completely commoditized products, most of our solutions, they start with customer issues and we whittle it down until we find exactly the solution that the customer wants. That's where we want to get. The risk of starting too early and going too far down the solutioning path during our capture campaign, it can create problems in that there can be unnecessary redundant costs that go with that. We could solution out some features that really don't have value or aren't going to be responsive to the requirements and that conflict with the RFP. If we think we've got a solution nailed and the requirements change or there's amendments or they're not what we thought they were, it could be expensive last minute proposal changes and result in weak messages. We certainly don't want to surprise the customer and propose things they haven't asked for. So what are these common solution gaps? Let's just talk about three. One is this idea of teaming and partnering. Second is past performance. And the third is key personnel and resources. Most of our proposing to the government, most of them will have an element of this that we need to be aware of. So teaming and partnering, pretty straightforward. These are hot buttons, that's what HB stands for. If our hot button 3 requires this capability for the customer and Vibrant can only get to here, obviously there's a gap. We can either design and build to fill that gap, or we can partner. Same with the requirements. The requirements are up here, our capabilities down here. We got to figure out some way to bridge that gap. All right, so that's fairly straightforward. Where there's hot button issues or requirements that need to be filled and we can't, we've got to think about teaming. How do we do it? We search like crazy. You know, we don't just depend on the usual suspects who we've always gone to. We have to think outside of our normal channels, look for new teaming partners. We have to have someone building these relationships with these teaming partners that will do a good job of selling our own organization. You know, it's a two-way street when we bring in a teaming partner, and we have to sell the value of teaming with us and not our competitor. Begin discussions as early as possible. We want to make sure there's no showstoppers when it comes to teaming partners. We want to make sure we involve contracts and legal staff early. There's a lot of authorizations and approvals, as you all know, that go with bringing teaming partners into a pursuit and onto a contract. So as far as past performance requirements, which is often another solution gap, is we just, the customer's asking for past performance and we just don't have it. If we're still in the capture phase and we still have access to have a discussion with the customer, we should be asking about the anticipated, and boy, you all did this beautifully this morning. Someone asked, what about past performance? we can ask that to the customer. What do they expect to be required when it comes to past performance, and how might it be weighted? I think my response this morning was, oh, it's crucial, and we're going to weight it really, really high. We'd want to know that sooner, not later, because we might have to go out and find qualified talent that brings us some of that past performance. Shape the requirements when we possibly can, whether we're the incumbent or the challenger. Research previous customer requirements. What did they ask for last time they put out an RFP when it comes to past performance? Was that required ahead of the rest of the proposal or at the same time? Was it 10% of the evaluation? Was it 20%? Do some research. Find out what past proposals have said. And then sometimes we can suggest favorable alternatives. And I'll share with you one example that we had here at Shipley. We had been working with a client for some time, and we were expecting a formal bid request to come out. And we had let this client know that there were certain aspects of the discussion we'd been having that we couldn't meet. Here we thought we were going to be in a favored position, and we said we can't meet those requirements. So the RFP came out, and sure enough, those requirements were in there that they knew we couldn't meet. We still had time, though, in the Q&A period to ask the question, is there a way we can present an alternative to that requirement and still be considered? And the answer came back very simply, yes. If you need to make an exception to that, describe it. And we ended up winning the contract and winning the work. So we shouldn't be afraid to suggest alternatives when it comes to past performance or other requirements. The other gap we sometimes run into is key personnel. You know, the customer is asking for certain qualifications, certifications, background, years of experience, degrees, and we're just falling short. We should, as organizations, be setting up personnel databases with keywords that can help us with this, that can help us identify possible people on staff that can actually be part of our key personnel team. And we should be creating success stories with our personnel so that we can draw on them when and if it's necessary. Make this information accessible and searchable to help us meet those requirements. Okay, so last thing on solutioning, there's really two conditions that are necessary in order for us to win work. So our Pwin, it's generally not going to go up and increase until we meet these two conditions. Those conditions are these. The value of our solution, it has to exceed the investment, the cost. If a customer doesn't see value or added value, they're likely not going to buy. The solution offers greater value relative to the cost of competing solutions. They are usually the customer is usually going to go with the best value, unless something else trumps it, like a relationship. So the value of our solution exceeds the cost. The solution is greater. The solution value is greater than competing solutions. Okay, another part of our action plan is this idea of a contingency plan. In the case of the case study, maybe just in the chat window, what might happen if this were reality? where we were selling software and related services to a government agency. And it was going to be, you know, a fairly long sales cycle. What might happen during that sales cycle that might be a game changer as far as requiring a contingency plan in a capture plan? Okay, a virus. That is a great point. Yeah. What else? Requirement changes. Competitors increase their capability. Budget reduces the funding. Citing of vendor staff. Election. Oh man, these are great. Combined contracts. Key personnel changes. Yeah, all kinds of amendments, delays, right? What about mergers and acquisitions? It is unbelievable the last few years how much consolidation and merger acquisition activity. So I won't ask you to answer this, but I would like you to just think case study for a moment. What if tomorrow morning, when we pulled open our homepage on whatever browser we use, and there was a headline that Omega had been acquired by SAP or Oracle or something. And we were still in the capture phase. There were no RFP out and so forth. You know, we would have to think, oh, well, what does that do? What does that do to know that this smaller company has now been gobbled up by a very large technology company? And what if in that press release it said that Omega was going to focus on their HR and finance systems? That would be a contingency we'd want to be aware of. They're maybe getting out of the CRM business. So there's all kinds of circumstances that might change and might cause us to reconsider our probability of winning and our win strategy. Yeah, the customer organization just changes. Key personnel change. What if Gert all of a sudden resigned? You know, and Gert was no longer a key influencer. Okay, you get the idea. We need to plan for the unexpected. The customer call plan. I hope you all understand the importance of this and the coordination of this. If we get too many cooks in the kitchen and too many people calling the customer from too many different angles with different questions, concerns, it really can be annoying and turn into a negative. So the capture manager should own the customer call plan, unless this is still assigned to a sales force. And that totally depends on your organizational structure. So sometimes it's the sales organization or BD making those initial contacts, and only after a certain level of qualification does the capture manager get involved. So there's too many variables to go down that path in detail, but make sure that this call plan is conducted wisely. We should prepare and rehearse every call. Remember, I mentioned earlier, we may only get one chance to ask a question or to gain credibility and trust. Accountability. What's the purpose of the call? What questions are we going to ask? What the answers might be, and how do we report back? Who's going to report back? Okay, slow down for yellow lights. Dennis, I'm going to hope you're still live with us. And what do you do when you see a yellow light and you're driving? Put you on the spot here.
Well, if I'm driving, depends on how much of a rush I'm in. But if it's BD, there's some investment on the line, I'm going to start looking to see, what's my Pwin starting to look like now, given what I'm seeing in front of me and what new information I may be getting. And that call plan is pretty important, particularly if you're getting information that's negative about your company, or maybe steering a procurement to a different contract vehicle. It's rare that I see customers slow down and then pull out. And usually that was not a good decision to go full speed ahead. Warning lights, I think, are like the light on your dashboard. Don't ignore them. Pay attention to it. Something needs fixing. Or if I could kind of mix metaphors, if you start getting danger lights like back in March, that says, oh, there's a little danger ahead, maybe we shouldn't take that trip or make that investment. That several folks who said, let's postpone that trip, and that was a good idea. So you want to be careful.
Thank you. So the learning point here is there is a tendency when we're working an opportunity, and it's going to mean a lot to us, strategically or monetarily as a company or individual, there's a tendency to speed up and speed through, like Dennis said, warning signs, a yellow light. If a customer says, oh, we really don't think we'll be able to implement that by that tight of deadline, or well, no, we don't think we'll have budget. Whatever that yellow light is, that hesitation, we shouldn't just ignore it and move on. We should slow down, talk it through, and understand it better. It gets back to peeling that onion back. Because our human tendency is we see a yellow light, and a lot of us will gun it and try and get through it. And the same in a selling business development situation. Too often, we don't slow down and resolve the issue before we move on. Thank you, Dennis.
Sure.
Customer contact plan. Again, this is just another look at it from the PowerPoint version. Some of these contacts, are going to have costs associated with them. Hopefully we'll get back to where there may be some travel involved and some attendance at conferences and so forth. The capture schedule. You as capture manager, you own the capture schedule. And you need access to the right people, you need visibility to the right people, and you need to set in place a calendar of key events, something like this, or something like this, just in simple Excel. However we do our calendaring and our task tracking, that needs to be made visible. Okay, if we were in a classroom together, I would probably climb up on the table and shout or do something loud and annoying because the RFP has just arrived for our boot camp. But Cindy asked a question, so hold that thought. Let me get to her question. How do you manage your potential teaming partner conversations so they are accessible to other internal capture managers? How do you manage your potential teaming partner conversations so that they are accessible to other internal capture managers? I assume, Cindy, you're asking how we make sure others on our capture team or pursuit teams we make sure they know of the discussions we're having with potential teaming partners. Okay, yeah, this just gets to be a matter of however you internally communicate with your team, but keep the circle small, keep it kind of a need to know basis on just to make sure you're not double contacting the same teaming partner or inadvertently contacting competitors who knowingly might be on another team. So it is tricky, and it's really important that whoever we have on our team, that we are delegating that task to reach out and contact potential teaming partners, that information be shared promptly and real time. I would document the conversations, yes. But again, I would keep them tightly held.
Brad, if I might add to that,
Please.
and totally agree, as a mechanism for doing it, large companies and especially small companies might have a key individual or function, usually in a contracting organization, that gets involved or is made aware of ongoing or new teaming conversations. So maybe in your organization, I don't know if you're large or small, you want to designate, such a person or one or two people with a protected close hold database or SharePoint, workspace that's not widely open, so that it's easy to find out, hey, who are we talking to? And it may be, that gets segmented for different types of suppliers or providers, in case the list of, possible teaming partners is in the dozens or so, to break them into categories to make it easy to answer the question, who are we talking to? But that is a great question, and important to really know as you're talking to a company about one opportunity, what else is going on conversationally and strategically with that possible partner. So really good question.
Good. Thank you, Dennis. Okay, so I couldn't bear to keep this gentleman's picture on the screen much longer. So the RFP is here, team, and we are in a boot camp, and we have a few days here to figure out what we're doing. So we recommend, remember we just talked a little bit ago about a preliminary bid decision? We recommend when that RFP arrives, as soon as it arrives, and we've had a little time to digest, very little time, we quickly get together and we validate. We want to validate that preliminary bid decision. Are the terms what we expected? Are they still likely acceptable? And we can go right through. Here's a really good checklist for us. Technical requirements, what we anticipated. Have we identified the proposal team? Maybe not yet. Okay, so we want to validate that bid decision as another decision gate. Are there any showstoppers in that solicitation, that RFP that have come out that would make us want to say, we better not bid on it? So that's that decision gate 4, validating the bid decision. Also, in many organizations, I would venture to say most organizations that deploy capture managers on opportunities, we have to, at this point, justify our decision, our decision, pursuit decision to go forward, our bid decision, because it's going to involve a lot of people and possibly a lot of resources. So many times we have to put together a bid justification briefing. Okay, and that's actually going to lead us to, this is what we're going to ask you to do between today and Wednesday is we're going to ask you to put together, we'll provide you a little template. We want you, based on what we've talked about for capture planning and the case study, unless you've got an opportunity you're working on now, you could do it for that opportunity, which would be perfectly fine. We want you to put together a brief bid justification briefing, justifying whether you want to stop this pursuit or continue the pursuit, or continue it but still gather more information. So you're going to want to make your presentation brief. We'll provide you the template, but you want to be compelling. You remember your audience here. You're preparing a briefing for your leadership. So you want to focus on the business fit, the return on the investment, why this opportunity matters to Vibrant. You probably want leadership to know that you've followed the process, that you've run this through some decision gates and gained approvals and consensus, that you've gone through a probability of win exercise, you've gone through a bidder comparison exercise. You want to be confident. The last thing a leadership team wants is the capture manager to come, talk through an opportunity, and be hesitant or waffling. So be confident in your briefing, your decision. We're not asking you to brief this, just put together the briefing. And then you're probably going to need to seek approval for some additional resources. So this is not uncommon. This is quite common that capture managers or the sales lead needs to present before some kind of review board or leadership board to gain approval to move forward. All right, I'll show you a sample template here in just a minute. Now, if we're going to go forward, and this is going to be quick because the rest of our boot camp will build this out, okay? But what we do not suggest that capture managers throw it over the wall. Please, if that has somehow crept into your culture to where it's an acceptable practice to throw a capture plan or an opportunity over to a proposal team and then hope they get it back to you in 10 days, that's not how it should work. So here's how we can support the proposal team, and we'll expound on this the next few days. Read the RFP. There, as capture manager, in know what the solicitation says. Not skim it, not scan it, read it. Validate the bid decision with the team. We've talked about that, and it usually requires some kind of little briefing. Provide as much opportunity background as you possibly can to the proposal team. And I know in some of your companies, you're it. You know, you've got to do it all. So that's why talking about proposal, how to manage a proposal is what we're next going to talk about Wednesday, and then how to actually bring together the message on Thursday. If we've done those strategy statements we talked about, we're going to leverage our strength in this by taking these actions. We should share that with the proposal contributors, the proposal team. We should be able as capture managers to draft quality theme statements for major proposal sections. We should also be able to draft or at least support the executive summary of the proposal. We'll talk more about that as well in the next two courses. Very important, we have to support the proposal color team reviews. It's not something we ignore or walk away from. So all of this work we're doing in capture planning, look how much of that should feed into what we call a proposal management plan. A proposal management plan is what guides the process of putting out a quality, compelling proposal. And all of these pieces from the capture plan flow right in to a proposal manager's plan. So when it comes to supporting the kickoff meeting, you'll hear more about this on Wednesday and even a little bit on Thursday. Notice the color coding here. The capture manager should provide input into these green bullet points. The capture manager may actually present at the kickoff meeting these lighter gray areas, in the proposal manager. And again, I know some of you are, you're it. You know, the proposal manager, if you have a dedicated proposal manager, would fill in the rest of these tasks. Help draft the proposal executive summary. As capture lead, there's no one better who understands the opportunity better than you. You should be the one to at least be able to outline or bullet out an executive summary that's going to go in the front of the proposal. What are the main hot buttons? Why are they putting forward this acquisition? And what are our discriminators? You've done all the competitive analysis. You've done the bidder comparison. You know where our advantages are. Let's get those in the executive summary. So from the RFP and the customer hot button issues, that should flow into the executive summary. And we'll coach you on that a little bit later in the boot camp. Theme statements, we'll go later into that, but here's just so you can be thinking about it, some definitions. We know what a benefit is. All right, it's the so what. So what if we offer a CRM, you know, to ESG? What's it going to do? The discriminator, we've talked quite a bit about that. A win theme. Themes link discriminating features and benefits in our proposals that address customer issues. The why us. A theme statement, however, is an actual statement in the proposal, and each major section of the proposal needs a theme statement. We'll be talking about that and teaching to that. The key proposal reviews that we need to be involved in as capture managers. We've talked about kickoff. We're involved in the kickoff. We should be involved in a pink team review. We're going to lead a discussion on where that falls and what the purpose of that. This is what goes into a pink team. This is early in the proposal process. This is the output. We're going to probably at least be aware and maybe provide some guidance for red team. This gets into where we're reviewing the near final proposal. So we're stepping back a little here, but we're still making sure major messages are conveyed. And then there's a gold team review. So we'll go through all of these color team reviews in the next couple of sessions so that we know what they are. You'll get some tools and templates to help you facilitate these. Very important, please, capture managers. We need to own up to this, and that is the white hat review. What on this pursuit, not just the proposal, we're talking now about the whole pursuit. What did we do well? What didn't we do so well? Where did we have to do workarounds? What did the customer tell us formally? What did we hear informally from the customer? Win or lose, we want these lessons learned captured, documented, and accessible. And those are the outputs of that. Okay, Cindy asks, will you discuss the green team review? Yeah, thanks, Cindy. A green team review is also a review, and by the way, you could read more about this in the capture guide if I'm too brief on it, but a green team review usually happens toward the end of a proposal effort as we're approaching submittal, the deadline for submittal. And a green team is the cost. Just think of green and money. It's the cost review where we're making sure that this is the business case financially that we want to propose. We can live with the margins, we can live with the cost, the terms, everything associated with finance and costs. We're double, triple, quadruple checking formulas. Make sure everything is a go on the financial side is primarily what the green team is for. A capture manager may or may not be very involved in that, but should make sure it takes place so that we've got a good business case there.
Brad, and if I might chime in on that, a key element, particularly if there was some turmoil on figuring out the solution, is to confirm that the bid price matches the promises and assumptions that are in the technical and other volumes. Otherwise, that could cause big headaches and problems hearing that back from the government that we have a mismatch of what we proposed to do and how we priced it.
Good, thank you. Okay, thank you all so much today for joining us, for your attention, your inputs. And I'd just like to quickly summarize a few key points that I think we've covered. One is this idea that it is tough. Business development is tough. There's a lot more constraints on us than maybe there used to be. Some attitudes about selling and business development. Technology is changing all around us. It's making the way we prospect, the way we communicate, the way we try to build relationships different. There is way more and better information out there, but as one of you pointed out, there's also a lot of false information out there. So we just need to be aware and smart about the information we consume and trust. Trust is becoming harder and harder to earn. Especially in this virtual environment. You know, it's tricky, and there is no secret formula. We all just need to kind of find our way. I think those who have built relationships already are probably really benefiting from those, and it's making capture planning work. Those of us who might be starting from scratch or trying to break into new markets or new customers, it's a little bit harder, you know, but we shouldn't give up and we should keep going. Remember, just a reminder that, you know, being a capture manager, we're wearing a lot of hats, everything from research to persuasion strategy. It's a fascinating position to be in the company because you see all of this going on and you're part of it. Distilled down, remember, capture simplified is just this, you know, competitor and customer analysis, develop that strategy and then execute. So a few key reminders: start early, do our homework, know our customers, make sure we're ready with good questions and we're ready to peel that onion a little bit. Track our Pwin. Don't just do it once, keep it going. Leverage our resources that are available to us, and we have to be super dependable people. Just on the interpersonal part of being a capture manager, we have to be the person people can depend on to meet deadlines, to be accountable and move the opportunity forward. Always look for evidence and impact. Remember what a win strategy is. It's all about action items and competition and where we stand. And capture plans are really, really important, but it's less about the plan itself and more about what we do with it and how we empower people to actually put into action the work. And then when the RFP is ready and we're going to have to compete in a document, in a briefing, in a video, whatever it is, we have to support that team that's responsible for putting together the message that will be delivered. So just remember, this is a really good roadmap for us to fall back on and help our teams understand. Some of your organizations are pretty new to this. You know, maybe you've been working on small business and you're moving toward large business, or maybe you've had sole source and now you're having to compete. Whatever your situation, this is a really just a good foundation to start with, and then build it out. You know, decide on what specific tasks and gates, decision gates, reviews you want to instill into your process. One handout we've provided you that I really like is just an old-fashioned, you know, a checklist, but almost any key activity you could think of as part of capture is on here. And you know, you could easily put this into a SharePoint list and checklist or some other collaborative, but this is just a fantastic checklist for a capture manager to look at and review. And I know there's a lot of things here, but that's what we do. That's what we have to do as capture managers to make it work. So that checklist is in your materials. Encourage you to use that, download that. Again, make it your own. We've talked about a long drawn out capture process. We don't always have time. And we know that. Sometimes, you know, time is short and we just have to do what we can do. But here are still a few key. We can still know the customer, who they are, what they stand for, what their strategies are, what their hot buttons might be. A lot of that can even be found on the website. It really can. We could prepare a bidders comparison chart. Like Dennis said, we can't do it for all potential bidders. If we're in a commodities business and there's dozens of competing companies, this is hard. But if we know what the typical 2, 3, 4, 5 competitors are, let's compare them and see where we stand. Team when we need to for strength, focus on our strategy on value to the customer. We have to show more value than our competitors. And then don't leave the proposal team hanging without our support. Okay. I hope no one came into this thinking that boot camp wasn't a little bit hard. But boot camps are tough, you know, and so we're going to ask you to do a few things in the next 48 hours or less. We would like you to in the materials you've downloaded, or in Shipley Online, if you go to Capture Final Assignment, if you just go to Modules, scroll down to where it says the Capture Final Assignment, you'll see a briefing template. It'll look like this. We'd like you to develop this template, and a lot of that you can cut and paste right out of what you've already done. The bidder comparison, the probability of win calculator. So just make it your own, a short briefing, and you'll submit it. You'll do this and you'll submit it. If you go to the assignment, click on it, and do the assignment, you'll see where you can upload that and submit that on Shipley Online. It will be pretty intuitive to you. So do your briefing. I know that you might not have time between now and Wednesday, so we're not requiring this before Wednesday. Please don't get caught up in that. We're going to give you a week after the boot camp for this assignment because it will take a little while. So do the briefing, upload it. There's a capture exam on Shipley Online. It's just a series of questions that review basically exactly what we talked about today. And you are now, I deem you the proposal manager. you are in charge of the vibrant response to the RFP that has just arrived. It's in your downloaded materials in the proposal management folder. You will see ESG RFP. In there, you'll see sections L and M of the RFP. And we encourage you now, as proposal manager, you might want to read it. You might want to be a little familiar. You've become very familiar with the customer. You know who the competitors are. It's game on. The RFP's out.
Sorry.
The RFP is out. It's time to respond. So your bid decision briefing will look like this. I'm just scrolling through the slides. Make it your own. Just, you know, have some fun with it if you like. But it's just capturing the key elements of a capture plan based on the case study. So again, not necessarily due by Wednesday. We know that that's a little bit of a reach. If you can, great, submit it. Yeah, you could use, that's great. You can use a real opportunity you're working on or that you've worked on recently for this briefing too. Just use some of the principles we've talked about in the course as far as win strategy and things like that. So yeah, you could use a case study or your own personal opportunity. So got a couple days to review the RFP and come back strong Wednesday. Kelson is going to lead the first part of the proposal management course. It's going to fit nicely as a follow-on to this, and you should come armed with a lot of good information to be proposal manager. Are there any outstanding questions? Yeah, Kelson and I are the only ones that see any submissions, so
we won't be broadcasting them to everybody in the class. No offense if people want to see that, but you know, if you want to use something that you're currently working on, know that it will just come to us and we'll provide comments.
How long is this expected? Jonathan, I assume you're talking about doing this briefing. I'm guessing putting together a briefing like this based on what you've already hopefully been doing on these exercises. And we're not looking for accuracy. Be as creative as you want, but I'm guessing it wouldn't take more than an hour or so to put together this briefing, but it depends where we're at. The test is just multiple choice. If you get a question wrong, you get a chance right then and there to correct it. And so the exam should only take you, I'd say, no more than 20 minutes at the most. Okay, you all been great. Thank you so much for joining this boot camp and going along with us. You've been awesome. A great group. And if you have questions, please reach out to us. We're here. We will rejoin you on Wednesday morning, same place. Feel free to download the rest of the materials if you haven't already, and we'll jump into proposal management on Wednesday. Take care. Have a great few days. Please be safe and healthy. Take care.